7 or 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and we are live. Hey, everybody, this is Josh Searson of World Alternative Media here. And of course, I'm joined, as always, by Tim Picciott of the Liberty Advisor. And we've got a good show for you today. We are going to be going into the effects of the current pandemic, shutdown, insanity, global depression on the auto market, on the car market, and on the housing market, and how we are witnessing possibly the catalyst to one of the biggest bubble bursts globally in history. And I'm looking forward to bringing you all this news today. But first, make sure to hit the like button, send in your super chats, share on social media, my friends, because it is difficult to reach people these days on YouTube. I'm sure you are all very much aware of that issue. Let's go into, before we get into anything else, let's go into this first article up from Zero Hedge. And as the article says, recession begins. Q1 GDP plunges 4.8%. Biggest drop since the financial crisis. Before we go into anything else, Tim, they're saying the recession's beginning. I mean, wait a second. Haven't we been in a recession since 2008? And I guess they're obviously saying recession based on GDP, which is correct. But we're seeing a huge plunge in the GDP, and it is the biggest since the so-called financial crisis. I think this one is far worse. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on the idea of the recession just beginning.
I mean, if we go back to, let's see here, if we go back to 2008, I mean, Ben Bernanke, I mean, right as we're on the cusp of the recession, said that, subprime's contained, it's not a big deal, nothing to worry about. And so these guys, they've never, and girls too, I mean, even Janet Yellen, what was it, just in 2017, said there's never going to be another recession again during her lifetime. So obviously that one did not age very well. I mean, when you do different projections, like the Congressional Budget Office, they project out, in all their scenarios, having, no recessions for 10 years, which is their projections go for 10 years. And obviously all the projections always end up being way, way, way worse than whatever they say. But in terms of your statement of we've been in a recession since 2008, that one is, in my opinion, correct, because what they do and what you have to understand is they rig. The most important thing is they rig the inflation number. So let's say the inflation number was really 6%, but they say it's 2. And so let's say the economy was growing at 4. And so you take the 4 minus what the BS number 2, or a lot of times it's 1 or 0. Right. Take the 4 minus the 2, then it gets you back down to +2 GDP. But what if inflation has been higher than that? I mean, it's not a really big what if, especially if you go and buy anything, these days. But if you go and take a look at, if you were to take the 4% growth in GDP, subtract the 6, and I'm just throwing that as a number, then you'd have a -2% GDP. So it's very important to understand how they rig these numbers, and rigging it through the inflation is one way. And then they rig the inflation numbers by saying, right, oh, if you used to buy Wagyu, steak, and now you're buying, hot dogs, we're going to put the price of the hot dogs in there, or your Spam, and not the price of, the other much more expensive meat. And then they're doing things like shrinkflation, right, where they're taking, what used to be, 20 ounces down to 19, down to 18, down to 16.
Right. That's exactly what they used to do in ancient Rome. Instead of the shrinkflation, though, they did coin cutting. So they just clipped coins into smaller coins and melted down pieces into new metals and formed new coins with it. But what you're saying is exactly correct. I mean, it's the same way they're manipulating the jobs numbers with the labor force participation rate. If you're working, if you're not looking for a job for a certain amount of time, suddenly you are no longer considered unemployed. It's just amazing how they mess with that stuff.
Well, yeah, and if you actually text WHAM to the number 71441, so just WAM, the number is 71441. I think it works for Americans and Canadians, so I'm sorry if it doesn't work for people in other places. But anyways, I wrote a book called How It's Rigged, the Economy, that details that out. It's only 20 pages long. Highly recommend it, because even if you guys already know this stuff, you need to know, your friends and family members and other people need to know how they're being screwed. It's not a left-right issue. I wrote it to basically disparage Barack Obama, and now the same thing. And the whole book is actually going through and lambasting Obama. I need to go, revise it now to give Trump his fair due as well, because now the things Trump's doing even worse. And it's just very, very unfortunate, because I wanted
it's the problems of central planning on steroids, and I definitely recommend people check that out, as well as everything else below in the description. We're going to get back to Tim in a moment, but I want to get to the main meat of the show today. And if you're just tuning in, make sure to hit that like button and send in your super chat questions for after. But I want to get into the issue that we're facing as far as auto loans, subprime auto lending, and the collapse of the auto bubble, which Wham has been talking about for many years, coming to fruition. Eventually, we're seeing massive financialization and massive control of this market. I want to get into the first article out of Zero Hedge here, if we could pull it up. As it says, Hertz bankruptcy imminent after massive layoffs. And I think we got the wrong thing up there, Tim. We got a video of our own video up on the screen.
Oops. So didn't want to do that. So
anyway, as the Zero Hedge article says, Hertz bankruptcy imminent after massive layoffs, missed lease payments. And this is an interesting article to go into a little bit, because Hertz obviously is one of the bigger rental car companies out there. And when we are starting to see these guys get hit by massive layoffs, and obviously people aren't buying or renting cars right now, obviously we're witnessing something that's going to affect a lot of people. And the article, Tim had to take off for a moment here, but as the article says, is an over-levered car rental business essential? And it says, you can bet your devalued dollar that is the pressure from the lobbyists on Capitol Hill right now, as the Wall Street Journal reports that Hertz is preparing for a possible bankruptcy filing after the rental car company failed to make lease payments to preserve cash amid the COVID-19 pandemic, according to people familiar with the matter. And now that Tim's back, if he could put up the article on the screen. If a sufficient amount of creditors, as it says, don't agree to waive any default by the end of the grace period, Hertz could be materially and negatively impacted, the company said. And just above the chart there, it says, for veterans of past credit cycles, it should be no real surprise that the rental car business is on its last legs. But CDS spreads this time are screaming default is imminent, and the recovery values for any debt are extremely low. And you could see the Hertz 5-year right there. And as it says below, Hertz has $17 billion worth of debt, which includes $3.7 billion of corporate bonds and loans and $13.4 billion of vehicle-backed notes. But despite the bankruptcy risk, the stock price remains ever hopeful that has some value, $650 million. I do want to get into the next article here to pile up on top of this issue that we're facing, which is out of the street. And as it says at the top, wave of repossessions coming as subprime auto buyers miss payment. And as this article goes into, it says, in a sign of upcoming trouble, subprime car buyers miss loan payments. As it says, Credit Acceptance Corp, the lender to car buyers with subprime credit scores, warned it's seeing a sharp drop off in payments as people shift their financial priorities to get through the coronavirus pandemic. And unemployment soars, borrowers are putting off payments or reallocating resources, Credit Acceptance said in a regulatory filing Monday, explaining that it needs more time to publish a quarterly report. New lending is also slowing as dealerships across the U.S. are forced to shutter their lots, the company said. And as it continues, Ally Financial Inc. said on Monday that about 25% of its auto loan customers have taken advantage of its payment deferral program. So tons of people are deferring. If we jump to the next article, this one also adds to this issue. As it says, Volkswagen car sales profits plunge during a coronavirus crisis. Volkswagen says car sales and operating earnings plunged during their first quarter, but that it has plenty of cash to weather the storm. They always say they have cash, but do they really? So I want to go to Tim on the idea of, well, what we're facing here, this massive auto bubble that has been persisting for many years, and it's coming to fruition today with the amount of deferrals, with the rental car companies going down, and with the auto sales plunging. People don't have money. People are hardly able to feed their family. How do you think this is going to affect the auto industry?
Well, I mean, there was a big time oversupply in autos for a very long time that was basically exacerbated by the Federal Reserve low interest rates. And so, really, what people were buying is they're buying a payment, just like in the housing market, they're buying a payment. What can I afford? So, it went from, back in the day, nobody bought a car on credit to, okay, we'd buy it on 1 year credit to 2 year credit to 3 year credit to 4 year credit to 5 year credit to
Mhm.
90-month loans, 72-month loans. And so, as the maturities keep getting extended out further and further and further, it made the car cheaper because people didn't care that their, Ford, Raptor cost $75,000. They just cared about what the payment ended up being because it would be so. I mean, it absolutely is like such a perfect storm brewing here because you buy a car immediately the car is worth probably at least 20% off as soon as you go and drive it out of the lot, and now you have an asset that's not even as worth as much, so you have an asset where if they were to repossess it, it's not enough to even pay off the note. And so it really set up this whole, perfect storm, that's brewing in the market. And we actually just some inside baseball. I mean, I was talking with Josh last night. We had actually a really great kind of funny conversation last night for a while. And part of that was, I was asking like, hey man, I know your truck is stuck in Vegas right now. If you don't have any, means to, get that back to Canada or have one of your family members buy it out or something, I'd be interested in renting it for a few months because I'm looking at maybe going up to northern Arizona in the summertime and want a better vehicle to do so. But I also don't want to buy a truck like right the second. Like I'd rather just, I feel like it'd be much better like 2 or 3 months down the road for me to buy a truck, which might mean it might be better for Josh to unload his truck right now. But what I was, just it's just you take a look at all these things brewing. I mean, there's a lot of companies where they basically specialized in subprime auto loans. I don't have it up here on the screen, but I know one of the ones that I was looking into I mean, we're looking at like 2015. So I think that's when the Big Short came out, or maybe 2016. I don't know. I lose
Right.
track of all the years. But people were asking me, what's your next Big Short? And this is before Josh and I had ever met. And the two, and I'm not financial advice. I'm not saying to go short this. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. And it was Deutsche Bank. And the other one was Santander. Now, I don't even know where Santander stock, what it's even doing today. So hopefully
So
it's
they
not
are
way.
trading in Ripple.
Well, hopefully, yeah. Hopefully it's not way up because then I'd look stupid. But anyways, they specialize in making subprime auto loans. And I'm like, oh yeah, can't go see what's wrong with that. And then Ally Financial, I believe you mentioned earlier. Ally just got I mean, that's just a rebranding of GMAC, it's like GM Motors, I believe. So who knows? And all these big companies are getting a bunch of ballots from the government, and then they're going to use those ballots and automate their processes to then get rid of jobs, or they're going to go ship the jobs off to other places. So yeah, I just see this being a big perfect storm that's all going to be coalescing together and probably getting a lot worse before it gets better. But it
Right.
depends,
And
worse for who. It's not going to be worse for me if I'm driving a 2011 and I need to go buy, I'm probably going to buy another used car because, cars, I don't drive a ton, but
right. And
yeah,
I do
anyways.
want to note that 27TC wrote in the chat, why are the rental cars pricing is still so high, 35 to 40 a day for economy, WTF? Well, by the way, you won't find that in a lot of countries around the world. I mean, you can rent a car extremely cheap in places like Greece, extremely cheap in places like Turkey, but also Greece has been in a huge financial crisis for some time. And I guess the market kind of reacted. But Tim, what do you think of, for example, just a collateralized loan obligations and how that plays into this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, like John and I did a video. I mean, right as all this stuff was really breaking down, probably like February 28th or something, exposing the CLO market, collateralized loan obligation market, and how that was going to basically be something that kicks all this off. Now, you also have that going on in autos. You got it going on, obviously, in real estate. And so what they would do is, package a whole bunch of crap together. But because you got a lot of crap, and all of a sudden we're going to rate it a lot higher. And one of the central tenets of the Anarcho talk I gave February 11th of this year was the fact you had about half of the investment grade bonds were only one notch away from being junk. And
Right.
historically, as soon as you enter a recession, you're going to get about, I think it's like 26 to 30% of those are going to be downgraded one notch because so many people don't just buy individual bonds. They buy bond ETFs or index funds
Hmm.
that now, if you are required to only hold investment grade bonds and you're not investment grade anymore. And this is also, this is the same thing going on with the CLOs. All of a sudden that selling then begets more selling and more selling and more selling. And it creates a whole avalanche. And so that's why they being the Fed had to come in and, rescue the bond market. But what should have happened is the bond market should have went down dramatically because they would not be able to honor their obligations. And then people that were doing the right thing and maybe being in cash or having gold or silver or other assets that didn't go down, or maybe they weren't being, maybe they're in short treasury bills, they should be the ones who should be able to come in, step in, and take over that company if they want to go buy those bonds. Because ultimately, it's the bondholders are the ones who actually call the shots, hypothetically, and not the stockholders. But in getting back to GM, that those rules got reversed in 2008, where all of a sudden, hey, we're in a crisis now, so we're just going to go make things up and just do whatever we want because we can't ever let the free market actually work. And in 2008, you had George W. Bush, who said, oh, in order to save the free market, we had to abandon the free market, but wouldn't be the first.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most people recognize at this point that the free market is gone. It hasn't existed for a long time, unless you find a flea market that isn't being extorted. But hey guys, if you haven't already, hit that like button, send in those super chats. Leo the Great sent $2 in the super chat and says, "Did you know Trump owes 211 billion to Bank of China?" So it's not 211 billion. It was misquoted. It was 211 million dollars that I saw. So that CNN ran an article saying it was 211 billion. It wasn't.
He owes more than what the richest person in the world is worth.
Yeah. So there's a lot of miscommunications there, but I really appreciate the super chat. And yeah, it's been something I've noticed a lot lately is a whole lot of misquotes in the media. Imagine that, whatever benefits them, right? And look, we have a good show for you guys today. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about bubbles. And we've been talking about the bubbles being blown for many years at this channel, but with the catalyst being coronavirus, and utilizing that catalyst to kind of knock over the dominoes, it's crazy to not think that we're going to see a lot of bubbles burst here. And by the way, if you haven't shared this on social media, that helps a lot too, because if you haven't noticed, we're extremely shadow banned with 140,000 subscribers and 232 people watching. So I really appreciate anything you guys can do, including pressing like and joining our new newsletter at www.iambanned.com. We're going to get into the housing market, from collateralized loan obligations to collateralized debt obligations. Let's get into the next article from CCN, which I've mentioned in the past a couple times on our show. But as the CCN article says, the housing market is edging dangerously close to a $1 trillion reckoning as mortgage forbearances rocket. Nearly $1 trillion in unpaid principal for housing market loans is another toxic asset bubble about to pop. And jumping into the next article out of Zero Hedge, as it says, pending home sales plummet by record in March, lowest level since 2011. And as this article says below, it says, after new home sales suffered their biggest March drop ever, pending home sales were expected to decline by a record amount month over month, negative 13.7% in March. However, pending home sales was far worse than expected, plummeting 20.8% month over month and 14.5% year over year. And you can see the chart there. It's alarming to say the least, as it says contract signings plummeted in all four major U.S. regions, including a 19.5% drop in the South and a 26.8% retreat in the West. And I quote, "The housing market is temporarily grappling with the coronavirus-induced shutdowns, which reduce listings and purchases," Lawrence Yun, NAR's chief economist, said in a statement. This is the weakest level since May 2011, after hitting its highest level since February 2017 in February. As it says below, March historically begins the annual peak U.S. selling season as warming weather spurs home searches, and families with children prepare for moves during the school summer break. That's been drastically curtailed in 2020 as the virus triggers the biggest economic contraction in decades, closing workplaces, schools, and other activities, with the biggest March decline on record. As Bloomberg notes, pending home sales are leading indicators of housing activity based on signed contracts to buy single-family homes, condos, and co-ops, typically occurring 1 or 2 months before closing. And if we jump to the next article there, before we go back to Tim, I want to mention this article out of the Irish Times, which I find interesting, and it goes to a lot of what I've been saying for quite some time now. Airbnb's future depends on post-pandemic travel boom. Hosts have started to add the phrase thoroughly disinfected to their listings, and I've seen that a lot lately. And look, Airbnb, in many cases, as I mentioned, which has blown up over the last 10 years and has hurt the hotel industry quite significantly in many good ways and, in some negative ways as well. What's interesting about Airbnb is that many of the super hosts there have gone all out and have a crazy amount of listings. They're looking now these days at more long-term listings. They want to see more long-term listings. We're talking 3 weeks to 2 months or so, because they want guaranteed security there. But what's happening is many of these super hosts have 20 to as many as 60 properties, and they have nobody staying there right now. And almost any Airbnb host, if you message them on Airbnb right now and say, hey, instead of renting your place for $2,200, how about $700? Most of them will be like, okay, yeah, sure, because it's cash and they're running out of cash fast. So this obviously has a huge effect on the housing bubble. But I want to go to Tim before we go into all the Airbnb craziness. I want to talk about the pending home sales plummeting by record in March, as I mentioned previously, and lowest level since 2011. What are you seeing as far as the housing market goes? I know it's a hyper localized issue, but still.
Yeah, I mean, one of the points that was made is that it was the previous low was it May 2011? I mean, my first home I ever bought I think it was like June 6th. I closed on it 2011, almost literally at the exact low. And so you don't just take this. Sometimes, I doubt we're at that lowest level right now in terms of, because we haven't really seen things absolutely crash because of the Fed's intervention. But and obviously it's hyper localized issue. But if you see everybody zigging one way, you want to start zagging the other way. And so I had people when I moved from upstate New York down to Arizona, they're like, didn't you just realize that the Arizona is like one of the hardest, if not, I mean, Vegas is the other hardest hit place. The Vegas and Arizona are the two hardest hit places. And here you are moving to Arizona. And meanwhile, they thought there's just, cowboys running around and I'm going to get shot or I'm going to get kidnapped by the cartels in Mexico. Like all the things you hear when you move from one place to another, because they want to, like Doug Casey says, they want to treat people like plants. Like people just, you're born here, you're going to stay here, you're not going to move. But the point of the matter is the average sheep out there in a government indoctrinated school sees, CNN and MSNBC tell me it's a terrible time to buy a house because it's the worst housing crash ever. Well, at the time, I think I was like 25 years old or 24 years old. And I was thinking, okay, well, if it's the biggest crash ever, well, now I can afford to buy a house. And then, use that to help money to help start the business I'm in right now, which enabled me to, quit my job in order to speak at AnarchoPoco three times ago. So, it's something where you always want to, buy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are buying. Right now, I think we're nowhere near. I don't really, my pulse isn't too much on what is going on in the actual, housing market. I'm guessing we're probably nowhere near as low. I know out here in Phoenix, I think you've seen it drop like a tiny bit, like maybe 3 or 4 or 5%. But the thing is that 3 or 4 or 5%, everything is predicated on the fact that everything is going to keep going up 3 or 4 or 5%, not going down 3 or 4 or 5%.
Well, I do want to note that it was only about a year ago that we were seeing, articles coming out of lineups, huge lineups, in some cases over 1,000 people trying to get their subprime loans. We were seeing a lot of people getting into the debt of how I just see a lot of similarities that I've seen in the past. I wanted to ask though, I mean, how much of a chance is there that we'll see a massive leg down in the next few months or a year with everything that's happening right now? Just I'm expecting to see literally that bubble pop and just us seeing housing sales plunge.
Yeah, I mean, so I am actually renting right now strategically, and I told the buyers, the owners of the house right now that I'm in, that hey, I'm here to basically weather out the next financial crisis, and then I'm going to go scoop in. And like a bunch of idiots, elitists, they because they own probably 20 or 30 homes, and guess what? We got a little memo that says, "Oh, knock knock, we're actually going to sell your home right now because of this whole financial crisis." I'm like, I literally told you guys I'm moving here because of the financial crisis, and now I'm willing to rent this, even higher rent for the next year. Like the smartest thing you could do is take the cash flow for the next year because I've, willing to be here. But they're not financial advisors; they're real estate speculators, and like real estate speculators, everybody thinks so. Oh, I'm going to be the one that I'm going to be able to push the trigger and sell everything before everything collapses because I'm, the next Donald Trump or something like that. That's going to be taken out of context. So Tim Picciott says he's the next Donald Trump. That's going to be used against me at some later date. But when it gets back to what is going on in the housing market and how low this can go, I mean, just think about it. You've got like rent strike is one of the largest search term, like the search term rent strike, like in Oregon and New York and other places, is like just, the only thing that's up higher is, the national debt and the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. And so if you've got renters who are not paying their rent, and then you've got the owners of the house who, they're not getting any money coming in because now all of a sudden, because they, in most cases, are over leveraged themselves, and now they don't have the money to pay the banks. But don't worry, the government's got plenty of money for the banks. And so if the government does, they can do things to delay this. But even absent all this, just think of the demographic issues here at play. The baby boomers, are probably, I don't have any scientific data on this, but I imagine they're the ones who probably own the most expensive houses by and large, across the board. But all of a sudden, you look at the average 55 to 65-year-old out there, they have, I think 61% have less than $100,000 saved for retirement before all this stuff went down. So now, okay, great. Maybe now they have 80,000 saved for retirement. Great. That's going to get you nowhere, especially if, assuming we don't even have hyperinflation. So great. You're going to get like 15, 20 grand off Social Security. You're going to get, $2,000 to $3,000 off your investments because you didn't.
And by the way, things were hard enough for most people to begin with. And in places like New York, people couldn't afford to even get a small apartment. And on top of all this, this happens. And now suicides are skyrocketing in places like Queens. Because you can only deal with so much when you keep getting trampled on, and then the government comes in and says, we're saving you by making you more poor and more bankrupted. I mean, it's just, it can't get any worse than that. It's at some point, people have to recognize what's happening to them and start taking some action over the victimization of them. Obviously, we saw last night, Elon Musk says, free America now. And I noted on it, like some guy commented, never mind your freedoms, we need medical care. And I responded to the guy and I'm like, well, this is going to kill more people. The economic consequences are going to kill more people.
And now there's going to be less medical care because now the hospitals and doctors' offices, I mean, I'm friends with doctors who own big practices who've had to lay off staff, furlough staff because they're not made out of money. And a lot of them just got out of grad school a few years ago, saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And they don't just have gigantic reserves of stocks to just delve into. And so now the other thing is by quarantining everyone that's healthy, you're not going out there. And again, I'm not a doctor, it's not medical advice, but you're going out there and all of a sudden now you see, especially that video that got taken down, the one with the two doctors where there's 5 million views on YouTube and it got taken down. I thought it was an excellent video. And anyways, they were talking about the fact that there's all these, healthy bacteria out there. And so by getting rid of all the healthy bacteria and by just being quarantined in your home, well, then now that's going to weaken your immune system. And then, all of a sudden we're all going to go back to work at the same time with weakened immune systems.
Right. No herd immunity. And it'll also prolong a pandemic because you just cannot get herd immunity out of it in that case. And I do want to note, though, this guy that was I wrote on Elon Musk's Twitter post, the economic consequences will kill far more people. And then in return, I get this guy who, I'm just going to name his Twitter handle. I'm just going to name it. I don't care. This
don't
guy
do it.
Who goes by @SPEITSH wrote, I am waiting. Tell me how people in the US are going to die from a recession. Go ahead. It's your claim. Prove it. I want a scientific paper telling me how people will die. I mean, you are basing this on science and not your personal opinion, right? No, it's economics. It's basic.
I want a double blind study run by the government who lies about everything.
This guy's literally his name for Twitter is Sebastian Stay at Peisch. Or it says it has a house emoji. Stay at home Peisch. I mean, come on, dude. How do people die from a recession? It's not a medical issue, though. Health, the healthy rate of individuals falls dramatically in poverty. But poverty kills. It causes suicide, drug abuse, crime. It causes lack of healthy food. It causes people to starve because they cannot eat. And that's one of the things I'm going to be going into shortly in this video.
And here's the worst thing it causes everyone to then, all the poor people then get propagandized by the government of we need to vote in all the more government to go save us, which then makes you more poor, which then kills more people, which then gives them more power and control, which then makes sure that they screw things up even worse. And so, I mean, government problems creating more government problems. Oh, here we go. We're going to break your leg and then give you a crutch. You're welcome.
Thanks. Thank you. I appreciate you inflating the price of living, destroying the dollar, enslaving me with the social contract usury and legal tender laws. I appreciate you stealing, in some cases, as much as 65% of my money. if you include all the taxes combined, only to pay to blow up children overseas and, find new ways to control me and control my life and make me miserable. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm questioning that concept, and perhaps we can have a conversation someday as free individuals about how this outdated concept of government was wiped out because people finally woke up to their own extortion and their own slavery. And we're not
But
going
then
to
they
mention.
got 12. But then they got $1,200 and decided, screw that. We're taking the $1,200 and we're not. We don't need to get rid of government.
It's ridiculous. But I do want to bounce into the next article, guys. If you haven't already, send in those super chats, hit that like button, and check those links below. They help out a lot here at WAM, as we are heavily demonetized. As this Zero Hedge article says, Boeing burns through a record $4.7 billion in cash as revenue crashes 26%, will fire 10% of workers. Tim, we have the airline industry absolutely cratering right now, and the manufacturers absolutely cratering at the same time as well. I wanted to hear your thoughts on all of this. Are we going to see more bailouts? Are these guys even worried? Are they like just sitting there like biting their fingernails, or are they like, whatever, screw it, we're gonna get some bailouts and everything's gonna be fine? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't have a lot of sympathy for them because what they spent $46 billion on stock buybacks, and I think which represented 96% of their free cash flow. So that's extra money. Almost all the extra money went to buying back their own stock. So now let's say your stock was $100 and you've got $1 million outstanding, and now you bought it back, and now you've got 900,000 outstanding. Assuming you have the same revenue, your earnings per share goes up. All the fat cats, CEOs, hedge funds, they all make a bunch of money. And now they're like, oh man, we need to be bailed out. Well, know what you can do? You guys are a bunch of idiots and decided to make these reckless moves. What you should be forced to do is sell your stock, have it absolutely crater, and then have guys who, bought put options, or like myself, or sitting in cash. We can go in and swoop up those assets. And this is not because I want to see the world burn. It's because they should never have been doing this stuff to begin with. And if you're making bad choices, then you should live with your bad choices. And it doesn't mean that all the airlines are going to go away. And that's not how things work. What will come in, the stock price will go way down. The bondholders, those prices will go way down. And the bondholders then get to start calling the shots and get to reorganize some of the debt. And in the future, the stock, maybe the people that own the stock shouldn't just incentivize the financial engineers and all the accountants and bean counters over there to just, start buying back their own stock. They shouldn't be incentivized to do that. So right. I have no sympathy, especially when I was coming back from Mexico and they wanted to charge me $220 to go, carry a third bag. And what I was carrying cost about $200. So I'm like, well, screw it. I'm just going to leave it here. Then I took it and tried to sneak it on the plane. Of course, the same gate agent downstairs was the same one that was upstairs. And I found the only 20-year-old guy in Mexico that couldn't be bribed. And so, I've got no sympathy for these guys over here. Now they're going to be like, oh, we're struggling throughout these times. And, there was nobody asking about, wearing masks or doing anything back then, even though coronavirus is going around. Actually in Mexico, they were actually all wearing, a lot of them were wearing masks. And actually in America, none of the TSA were wearing.
It was funny because I'll never forget going to LAX in late February. After I went to Hollywood, I did a show for Netflix, and then I did Sam Tripoli's podcast. And on the way back,
which I highly recommend you guys check out. Highly recommend you guys check that one out. Oh, and
yeah, it was a good podcast. And Sam Tripoli will be our guest here on WAM soon, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. We were talking with him a couple nights ago. But so here's the thing, though. I was walking on this airport. I went through the Chinese section, and there were people coming off of Chinese flights sweating and coughing and throwing up in garbage bins everywhere. And I'm like, this seems slightly ill-advised, seems a little strange. And no one really thought of it at all. Like I remember cleaners going up to the garbage and cleaning it up, and then just walking away, and then someone else would like be throwing up in a garbage right after that. It was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. It felt like I was at the beginning of a zombie movie. But anyway, I do want to ask Tim more questions regarding this whole debt crisis and everything. First, make sure to hit the like button on this video, share on social media, and send in those super chat questions. They go a long way, and we really appreciate anything you guys can do to keep this media up and running. Check those links below. We have a COINTREE account that allows you to see all of our social medias and all of our crypto addresses that you can tip as well, including Monero if you don't want to be known. But anyway, Tim, I wanted to ask how the banks are going to be reacting to all this, all these bankrupt banking institutions that we see around the world that have an insanely low cash deposit ratio. Their balance sheet shows that quite clearly. We have Deutsche Bank crashing. We have Wells Fargo crashing. We have JP Morgan, though it'll probably be bailed out, huge, I should say, in the near future, possibly crashing. But these banks are heavily involved in this financialization, obviously, of the housing market, of the subprime auto lending. I mean, how do you think the banks will fare long term with all of these things piling up right now?
Well, long term, I mean, probably the same crap that happened in 2008 is going to happen over again, where the too big to fail banks are even bigger today. Then it became too big to jail with Eric Holder and running Fast
Mm-hmm.
and Furious and all that stuff that was going on. And now, I mean, I did see a report that some of the smaller regional banks that they are getting, very, very hurt and devastated right now because the priority isn't bailing them out, whereas some of the big boys like J.P. Morgan and who basically runs the Federal Reserve because they essentially run the New York Fed, and that's a whole other thing of that's a whole nother rabbit hole to get down. But I expect them, 5, 10 years from now to probably own up even more of the world. I mean, look what the Federal Reserve does. Everyone's like, oh, Trump, went and nationalized the Fed and saved the world. No, he didn't. What happened is now the Treasury is in a first loss position. So if there's any losses to be had, or when there's losses to be had, guess who's going to take it? We are. And then our taxes are going to go up, and that's why I'm working hard on different strategies, and I'm actually thinking about moving to Puerto Rico for half the year to at least help out on my part to do what I can do. But everyone's going to have their own opinions on this, and as things get crazier and crazier and crazier, you're probably going to see more people who think Bitcoin will not be as crazy of a thing to do anymore. And we're seeing right now, Bitcoin's almost at close to $8,700, and that's up quite a bit. We've got the halving coming up to beginning of May, so who knows? I mean, it's such a crazy world that I expect the big banks will get even bigger, get even more powerful, will exert their influence over politicians even more. I think none of this is really hard things to predict. It's like, hey, I'm going to walk outside in Phoenix and it's going to be hot out. I mean, it's not a huge, but then the smaller players will then get bought up by the bigger banks, which means they'll have us even more by the what, which will make this even worse next time, which means that we have to come in and save them in air quotes next time, because now if we don't, just think of all the bad things we can have. But it's like hey, what if we were slaves in early 1800s, and it's like, oh, what if we get rid of all the slaves? Just imagine what's going to happen to these plantation owners. Well, we're basically still slaves because our money is owned by central bankers. It's not our money, it's their money. It's actually not even money, it's technically currency. That's the whole thing. I mean, go look into Mike Maloney Hidden Secrets of Money series to get information on that. But that is the biggest problem, the fact that our money is not even our money, it's owned by other people. And until you solve that problem, which is very easy to solve, get rid of the Federal Reserve, allow competing currencies, that's the solution. And if business XYZ doesn't want to take Bitcoin or doesn't want to take a euro or doesn't want to take a dollar, they should be able to decide what their customers want, what their customers are willing to do. And that's the solution. Allow freedom, legalized freedom is the answer to everything, Josh.
Yeah, I absolutely, I 100% agree. We got some trolls in the chat that I'm not going to mention, though we do have a comment that I want to mention. Laura Escoto, who is a great viewer of us here at WAM, completely misunderstood what Tim was saying about Mexico, and not saying that Mexico worships money. Mexico doesn't believe in government for the most part, and they just don't follow the laws like we see in so many places around the world, which is based on pure slavery and pure collectivism and unrivaled statism. So I honestly I think you misunderstood what he was saying there, but yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I'm in Mexico right now. I'm living in Mexico. I have no choice, and I love Mexico and I love everything about it. One of the cool things about Mexico, though, is that people just, when the government says mandatory lockdown, people are like, or not.
A better way of stating is I found a super status Mexican kid, and it was like the only super status in Mexico that I happened to find, and unfortunately, it happened to me. So it wasn't
right. So yeah, and I had a similar issue actually going, and not everyone is a freedom lover here, but a lot of them are. And anyway, I really appreciate everyone watching right now. Make sure to hit that like button if you haven't already. Tim, I'm not answering the stupid questions in the chat. There's some good ones, but they're getting covered up by a whole lot of trolls right now.
Well, people were asking about Shiva as well, because the whole Shiva, I don't know if you wanted to get into that now.
No, it's just drama. I saw some stuff about it. I think there's a lot of assumptions on both sides, and I'm not going to get into it.
I mean, at a super high level quick version, I mean, I've sat down with Shiva, was talking with him one-on-one like 3 years ago, and he seemed to be a pretty genuine guy. And I hooked him up with another radio show host, and I had heard him taking shots against all these people months and months and months ago before he was like a somewhat household name in the alternative media space. And so he was taking shots at them, and now they're accusing him of the same thing he was accusing them. And now everyone's like, oh, look at this, is definitely the proof. But it's still, who knows? I mean, technically he's a
Yeah.
politician, so I guess don't really trust any
Yeah,
politician.
well, you know how it is. And I want to get into the next article here because there's more news to talk about today. If you haven't hit that like button already, I highly recommend it. And sending in those super chats keeps us up and running and makes it possible for us to run this operation. So if you want any questions answered, the super chats are the best way to do that. And I really appreciate anything you guys can do. As this Zero Hedge article says, violent food and fuel shortage riots grip Venezuela amid COVID-19 lockdown. We've been warning about this for many years at WHAM, and this is just, look, they got rid of the hyperinflated Bolivar for Huerte, and now they've replaced it with a new Bolivar, just like Argentina replaced their 50 other old hyperinflated pesos with a new peso. It's BS, but as this article says here, despite a 6-week mandated nationwide coronavirus lockdown, broad protests have once again gripped parts of Venezuela amid crippling food and fuel shortages. Citizens are being asked to stay home, yet can't get enough food to survive. Yeah, that's sustainable. New reporting by Bloomberg counts at least 500 protests across 15 states so far this month, which has included multiple killed and scores wounded and arrested in often violent clashes with police. Also, as protests turn to looting. And I should also add, we'll keep the article up on the screen for now, but I should also add that there's a massive health crisis when it comes to not having any money. If you don't have money and if you're impoverished, not only can you starve, but also you eat less healthy food, and the mortality rate skyrockets among the impoverished. That's a fact. Another comment to the guy who recently wrote to me on Twitter saying recessions don't kill anybody. Yeah, okay. As the article continues here, it says riots have also reportedly erupted in some instances over police attempting to enforce quarantine rules, such as wearing of masks being enforced in all public spaces. This as only 311 cases of coronavirus and 10 deaths have been reported nationwide, according to official government figures. However, in part thanks to U.S.-led sanctions, what little personal protective gear was available flew off the shelves last month, with few options available for most citizens other than sewing their own masks. And it shows in Spanish a message on, I believe, Twitter from Observatoria de Conflictos. It says, following up here, while most families in North America have Amazon and Walmart deliveries of food and vital items coming to their door, also amid an abundance of cheap gas, Venezuelans are forced to venture out of self-isolation, seeking out needed resources to survive. And I quote, stocking up and hunkering down isn't an option for many people who are too poor to buy enough food in advance, as Bloomberg notes. Well, this is pretty obvious that this was eventually going to happen. And this leads me also to the next article and the final article before we get into all the questions. So make sure to send in those super chats. But as it says from Zero Hedge here, Rabobank, the next phase of the crisis, food shortages in staples such as rice, sugar, corn, and eggs. And if we pull out of the article here, one thing we have noticed a lot lately is obviously all these stories about the supply chain breaking down. Tyson Foods has been putting up full ads in major newspapers warning about the collapse of the supply chain. We've seen pictures and videos that are horrific of just millions of livestock just being killed because they can't get inspectors in from the government, which they cannot sell the meat without the inspectors coming in. So basically, instead of just, I don't know, freeing the animals or whatever, or instead of just eating the animals for all the starving people out there, they just slaughter them and pile them in massive piles that are 100 feet long, piles of dead pigs. So obviously, this is another example of how government does not help us. Government stands in the way and causes these problems in the first place. It's sickening what we're witnessing right now among the livestock. It's sickening what we're seeing in the collapse of the supply chain. And it was all something that we warned about for many years here at WHAM. And people in many cases didn't want to listen. They said we were fear mongering. Well, look at what happens now when a 70-year-old grid goes down, when a supply chain that is extremely weak and based in dependency in so many cases breaks down. Tim, what do you think of the supply chain breakdown and people obviously rushing to try and get food and masks and things that are just not readily available, like we see in Venezuela?
Well, speaking of Venezuela, I just want to shift over there real quickly and point out that, what was it, March 5th, 2013? We got Michael Moore over here. Hugo Chavez declared the oil belonged to the people. He used the oil money to eliminate 75% of extreme poverty, provided free healthcare and education for all. And then believe it was Bernie Sanders who was tweeting out, similar things, back then. And somebody asked Bernie Sanders about Cuba, and he's like, well, they had free healthcare. And so it's like, probably a terrible impersonation. But what was it? What was the question again?
Well, just a complete collapse of the supply chain, Tim. And as we look at Venezuela, people are rushing to the streets trying to get food because the government that promises them all these programs, they ran out of food. The stores are out of food. They can't get deliveries. Capitalism is not allowed to exist, and the whole system collapses.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very slippery slope, and we saw what happened with oil. I mean, where all this stuff, happens very, very fast. We're seeing, lines of like 100 feet long of pigs who've been slaughtered and nowhere for them to go because all the plants can't be processed. And we saw, TikTok videos. I think the Anthony Blanchard shared where it was, all these, whole field of onions that they just, letting to rot. And he's like, listen, he's like, I can't even sell these for a penny a pound. And so it's a very slippery slope when, you affect one thing over here, like, oh, we should just, ban everybody from working. And then all of a sudden, there's all these reverberating effects. Excuse me. And then everybody,
Corona.
Swallowed on the wrong tube. So, so what was going on with, when it comes to the supply chain is we're in such everything has been so centralized. It's gotten taken over by the big people like the Tyson Foods. Whereas, you go back to the Great Depression, a huge amount of people were, I don't have the exact stats, but I mean, I imagine probably over a third of people, probably even higher than that, probably maybe even 80 or 90 were growing their own food, or they knew if they didn't, they knew where their food was coming from. So they could walk down the street, they could go drive 2 miles away to go, shake the farmer's hand. Well, maybe not now because of all the coronavirus stuff that's going on.
The Wuhan
shake.
Give
them a little Wuhan shake, maybe, hit their feet or something. And then they can go over there and, get their food. Whereas now we're so disconnected. Nobody knows how to do anything. And I'll be the first one to admit, I have no idea how to cook. I mean, I would be sort of screwed. If
that's one of the things we were talking about on the phone last night, Joe. I'm like, dude, this is a good time. Good time. We would
have had that. Actually, that would have been like an awesome podcast if we would have turned that into a podcast. For about half it probably wasn't appropriate to put out here. But yeah, we had an awesome conversation last night. But yeah, I mean, going back to Hugo Chavez declared the oil belonged to the people, and everyone wants. I mean, look at all these people. I mean, you can't even. I mean, the fact that we have negative oil, just who would have seen that coming? I mean, nobody would have seen that coming. And now with the food and with the gold, it's probably the opposite, where instead of, or people are like, oh, wait, I actually want to take delivery of my gold, and wait, it's very hard for me to get the gold delivery. Now I think they'll get it delivered, but what's going to happen is, well, if you need to go sell your gold, well, then that price can go shoot up potentially in the opposite direction, because now people want to take possession. Whereas with oil, people are like, oh crap, I have a 800 square foot apartment in New York City and I've been trading oil futures. I can't just have 43,000 gallons of oil delivered to my house. So it's it's just such a nut.
Well, and other than like the dependence issue that we're witnessing, also on top of that, we're facing an issue of with the supply chain breaking down, the profits lost, the major businesses that are unable to, pay their employees. So their employees are unable to feed their family, and then being unable to feed their family, they resort to desperate situations to get whatever money they can. And the government prints $2.2 trillion and then gives, I think it was $460 billion to people.
The LA Lakers just got a bailout. I mean, are you kidding me? Do you see that story?
Well, it's very essential. Bread and circuses are very essential at the end of the world, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, like their value of their team is only worth like, I don't know, like $4.3 billion. And you've got, all the highest paid superstars like LeBron James and you guys. I mean, it's just,
they're like, we're all in this together in their mansion that's the size of a small town.
And like, what's the other guy, like Richard Giffen or David Geffen is like out there on his like super yacht. He's like, don't worry, we're okay. And all these.
Yeah. Have you seen, there's a Babylon Bee article a couple days ago that came out that showed all of a bunch of A-list celebrities came together to spell out, we're all in this together with their yachts. And it's just a picture of all these yachts that write out, we're all in this together. It really is a symptom of what we're dealing with right now. I want to point this out though, for those that don't believe that we're shadow banned. If I can focus on this, there it is. This is our video today, and they froze our views again on it, saying that we haven't gotten any views for most of the video. So we're stuck.
if you turn that upside down, it's actually gonna be like the Federal Reserve chart,
Or the job growth, or I mean the job losses, but yeah, not the job growth. Unless, well, I'm sure they don't mind propping up fake numbers like usual. But just so you know, that's our shadow banning, my friends. That is what we're dealing with. So make sure to share this on social media. Press the like button.
Somebody says Zoltan Bose says the NBA needs the money to pay China back. So
yeah,
it wasn't the
LeBron doesn't
yuan,
want to hurt China.
The yuan BA or something. What they were. I mean, they get all their shoes made from slaves, and they're out there, acting like social justice warriors.
I'm sure that's probably why we see people like Dennis Rodman so connected to Kim Jong-un, who may or may not be dead right now. Nobody knows.
At least they've now solved the obesity problem in North Korea. So now they've he's probably the only fat guy in North Korea. So
yeah, David Mancini wrote 140,000 subscribers and 286 viewers. I know, right? Well, I mean, this is shadow banning, my friends, which is why we need you guys to send in those super chats, hit that like button and share on social media, and join our new newsletter at www.iambanned.com. We really appreciate anything you guys can do to keep us up and running. We are facing some really rough times.
And we do see Luke in the comments, obviously. But I will say though, today Luke and I did get into it. I don't know if I don't think the video's up yet. It'll probably be up in like an hour or so. But in the video we did from earlier today, we had some nice back and forth, some nice banter. If people wanted to check that one out. So yeah, what other questions people have? I don't see too many super chats.
Well, let's see. Fred Shuma says, do you guys think this is a good time to invest in Tesla? Now, we cannot give any advice. We could only talk about opinions. But obviously, I'm not sure I could really say if it's a good time or not, because right now everything's so uncertain. Though with oil crashing, there is a lot of possibility or potential for the electric car and solar car industries. And I don't know. We went into that a little bit with Colin Cantrell recently on our show, who, by the way, his father was a co-founder of SpaceX, and Colin Cantrell is absolutely brilliant.
I think he's probably the smartest person I know, and I feel like I know a lot of smart people. So he's like definitely up there. I can only understand like 30% of what he says when he really gets going.
But I mean, I don't understand half the things he says, and that's one of the things that always frustrates me. I hate it when I don't know what people are saying, and that's one of the reasons I've tried to learn so much over the years.
But I love when somebody in the comments like, "Oh, what does this guy know about communication technology?" And meanwhile, like he's starting like rocket companies to get satellites in space to have like this anti-5G network. And
but the people that are writing that also probably don't believe in space. But hey guys, make sure to hit that like button, send in those super chats. We got $2 earlier from Leo the Great, which helped out a lot. And again, all those super chats go to keeping this operation up and running every single day. And we are 52 minutes in and we haven't gotten anything else yet. And it's the only way we can monetize our content here. So $1 or more a month, even with Patreon or Subscribestar or with, GoFundMe, make a huge difference. Magic Monkey Love insists that I am a shill and wrote for people to hit the dislike button. Well, if you don't like the video, hit it, go for it. But I recommend hitting the like button because I'm not a shill. And if I was a shill, I certainly would be in a higher position of power right now and making a lot more money than having to spend all of my money on a $400 a month rental in Mexico.
No, you're just getting people to pay for you're just getting people to pay for your vacation, Josh. That's
I know. It was like when I went to Africa, I was in the Sahara Desert going through a minefield, and I was sleeping with cockroaches crawling on my face, which I had to pick off and throw across a room all night. It was a freaking nightmare. And everyone's like, oh, you just want people to pay for your your 5-star vacations to Mauritania, Africa. I'm like, oh yeah, Mauritania, Africa, there's a vacation I want to be on. Like, it's the least touristed country in the world. It's just, this is unfortunate that we have to deal with so many people that would prefer to troll and give nothing of value to a conversation rather than try to, if you don't like what we do, fine. But I mean, there's a lot of people out there that do like what we do, and it's more important than ever to share this information and bring it to people. And I'm going bankrupt doing this, but I do it because I love doing it, and it's something that I want to continue doing. I started off for years making nothing off of it. And I was able to make a few dollars years ago off of monetization. They basically demonetized us since. So what can I do? Richard Hoekstra sent €2.29 in the super chat. Thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate those super chats. They go, again, a very long way here at WAM. So that goes towards an entire dinner here in Mexico, by the way. I appreciate that. Keeps me up and running. Derek Slight sent $9.99 in the super chat and says, thank you. Thank you so much, Derek. You are awesome. All of you guys are really awesome, and you guys keep us up and running. So it's great to see the last minute momentum, happening here on this channel. Cannon Wild sent $10 in the super chat. Says, "Wham! I love the channel. Stay woke." I appreciate it. You as well, and those again. That means a lot to me, guys. So I really appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to a guy by the name of Joshua who sent a super chat yesterday right as the stream ended, and I wasn't able to thank him on air. And BC Matrix asked, when Vegas opening up? Well, there's a lot of conflicting reports on that.
And will they let you back? And will they let you back in?
Yeah, will they let me back in? There's a good chance they won't. But the mayor says she wants to open up Las Vegas immediately. However, the governor doesn't. There's a huge distance between government agent and government agent. But people on the ground, I guarantee you, people who work and enjoy working and enjoy making money for their family are very desperate to see things open up again. Though Vegas didn't get hit as hard as a lot of places, but like 250,000 jobs were wiped out. So, I mean, it's nothing to, shrug off. I mean, people were allowed to walk around more in Vegas than most places, but they weren't able to work. Though I know one place called Lazy Dog. It's a diner in Las Vegas in the Summerlin neighborhood. And if you've ever lived in Summerlin, you've probably heard of it. It's a great place, really a huge menu, all that kind of stuff. And because they said only essential services can be provided, they did something only a Mexican usually would do, which is they decided to sell milk and eggs and stuff like that out of the restaurant so they could keep a few jobs up and running and keep a little bit of profit coming in. And that was just awesome. I love to see businesses innovate in that way and get around these crises. Unplugged says, "Wham, keep up the good work." Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Magic Monkey Love, I guarantee you I am not a shill, but you can think whatever you want. You are a new viewer after all. Go back to see us shouting at both sides, the politicians on all sides of the collectivist spectrum. I Am Me says, "Josh is taken by beautiful and wise woman. I don't think any physical insult can take that away from him." Well, I appreciate that, and I agree. You can. I honestly don't get offended. I don't care. I just get annoyed by stupid people, but I don't get offended. It's a waste of human life. Speaking of waste, Jonathan Feliciano Van Eidhoven, who I think is actually Luke on a puppet account because of the weird comments he was making earlier, says Elon Musk is a waste of human flesh. That doesn't seem like something Luke would say, but nonetheless, I'm still pretty sure that's a Luke sock puppet account. If you just
it looks like Josh and his internet connection may have went down, so maybe we didn't get him enough super chats in there. And I do see. Let's see what else we got here. Bill Gates, biggest shareholder of Auto Nation. Okay, you're back. You're down.
I'm
briefly.
good. Yeah. So sorry, I was pointing out how someone was a Luke Rudowski sock puppet account, and I got frozen. So that tells you all you need to know. I'm just kidding. But we have other comments coming in that I want to get to as many as possible. Let's see. Again,
somebody asked me if it was Racism Wednesday for me, my comment against Koreans. It was a comment against dictators and authoritarianism that Kim Jong, everyone in his nation is starving and is famished and skinny, and he's sitting at the top, very fat. And so they killed obesity if he was to go down. And
let's be clear here, guys. Yeah, they would be. Yeah, totally. 100%.
That was a joke, and also against dictatorship.
That's what I don't get is when you call out a country, a nation, a governance system that has the name of, say, North Korea or has the name of China. That doesn't make you racist against the people. It means that you are consistent and are sick of watching those people in those countries get raped and pillaged. I mean, it goes without saying that when I say China is the worst, one of the worst countries in the world, the U.S. government is pretty bad, killed millions worldwide, but Chinese government killed probably more people than any government in history.
But then the U.S. installed Mao, so so I mean,
Yeah,
you can
well, they
sort of
didn't
tie it back to us
install,
too.
but they allied with him and created the new world order of China in the first place. They
Like
created the
Zbigniew
monopoly.
Brzezinski, and yeah, I mean,
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, to say that someone's racist for saying, "Oh, I don't like Saudi Arabia," it doesn't mean you don't like the people. You are sick of the people that are hurting the populace on the ground in Saudi Arabia. It's literally the opposite. You're trying to defend the people on the
and
ground,
I
but
literally
nonetheless.
don't know any North Koreans to be racist against them because their fat dictator won't let any of them out of the country. So,
Yeah.
so
Speaking of fat dictator, if you ever been to Morocco and walked into any room, there's a giant portrait of a fat face on every wall by law. But I'm not going to go too far.
what does stereotype Wednesday work better? Okay, I'm stereotyping that people in North Korea are famished and really skinny. I mean, I think that's
That's what communism does. I mean,
yeah.
if so, we have a lot of friends that came from the USSR
I'm
over time. They
stereotyping
lived
people that
in
live in communist countries. I mean, yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, so when I'm thinking of, the USSR, for example, we see mass starvation. I believe there was 12 starvations over the period of the communist dictatorship in the USSR, and yeah, people were skinny. The a popular example of a communist country would be an empty plate. And that's exactly, I think, what we're kind of getting at here. But nonetheless, let's see. There's some comments I'm definitely not going to read out loud, as per usual. By the way, if you haven't already, hit that like button, my friends. It's another fun day at World Alternative Media. We do have a few trolls today, and there's only so much I can do about that. But all that helps.
it probably helps with the algorithm though. So
Probably. Yeah, the extra comments help. And also sharing on social media helps. Checking out our new newsletter at www.iamband.com. And the super chats helped a lot. So another big shout out to, let's see here, a big shout out to Leo the Great, Richard Hoekstra, Derek Slight, and Cannon Wilds for those super chats. They make a big difference. And again, we are going to be doing a show tomorrow with the one and only Jeffrey Tucker, which I hope everyone tunes in for. I'm really looking forward to that. Jeffrey Tucker is one of the most brilliant people out there, and it's important that people hear his message on this because he's been on the ball with this crazy pandemic insanity that we're witnessing across the board. Hey shit, it says keep it up, Josh. You should encourage direct donations because YouTube takes 30% of super chats. Yeah, but the problem is it's the super chats are the easiest way to get donations that keeps WAM up and running. So while I do encourage people to go to GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar, even on float.app, flote.app, you can donate in crypto, and same with the COINTREE account there. There's many crypto addresses as well as in the description that you could tip to. The thing is, it's easier to get people to help out in that way because it's the easiest, simplest method to do so. So I would encourage people to go to those other routes too, but the super chats also give incentives so that we can see your messages, give shout outs, and maybe answer a question you might have, which is always I think quite worthy. We have some other comments coming in. Magnus 4G63 says, what a time to be alive. I hope we survive it. I hope so too. And by the way, it's always good to see you, Magnus. I've seen you on our videos commenting for what now, 4 or 5 years. So always good to see you. I got a lot of unsubscriptions on the David Morgan interview I did yesterday. I'm not quite sure why, because it was very insightful video, but a ton of people were commenting in the comments something about how unsubbed fear mongering, and it was literally just a video about hope, humanity. It's like a happy video about things that help people get out of this crisis, many different things. And people were like, I'm unsubbing, this is fear mongering. And I'm like, if this is still fear mongering at this point, I don't even know what to tell people anymore. It's just so crazy.
yeah, it's like you're a lost cause if you're still thinking that at this stage of the game right now.
Oh my goodness. So don't forget to press that subscribe button and also find us on float.app. That's flote.app. I'm at Josh Sigurdsson as well as at Wham. And of course, Tim is at the Liberty Advisor on float.app. That's advisor with an OR, not an ER.
Yeah, there's some fake people on Instagram, which is funny. The fake Instagram account of me had more than mine, way more than mine. So I think that one just got taken down, but yeah.
So we got a question from Stupot 212 that says, are auto loan repayments down due to virus or What do you think? What's causing? Because I mean, this was a bubble for a long time, and obviously we're going to be met with that bubble eventually. But we see a catalyst here. What do you think, Tim?
I mean, the very first video that I ever made for Wham, I mean, technically, so when you went to Mauritania, we started posting videos of me where I was just a random guy that showed up one day, but it was Anarchozona, where I had one of the slides in there was talking about how there was a record amount of people who were 90 days or more delinquent on their payments. And that was, I think, like April 2nd of last year, or maybe March 30th, like right around there. And so this was already a problem. This was already a big problem. But now, what are the things that people are going to pay? People are going to pay their cell phone bill, they're probably going to pay for food, and maybe TV, some of their bread and circuses, but they're probably going to pay for a car. And so those are the three biggies. All other thing withstanding, are the three biggies are going to pay for it. And so now that this is the perfect excuse. Now a lot of people did lose their jobs, and so I don't want to downplay that. But obviously now, I mean, this is just like the master skeleton key. I mean, what just went on is a bank robbery. The United States of America just got robbed, and the citizens got robbed by the big bankers, by the Federal Reserve. And this is all, in my opinion, a pandemic to usher in, be able to quote unquote fix all the problems that are going on. And so, don't let a good crisis go to waste. We're going to go bail everybody out. We're going to go buy all the bad bonds off your balance sheet, and we, the Federal Reserve, are going to take it. And oh yeah, by the way, we're going to make sure that BlackRock, who already is the largest asset manager in the world, they get a commission off everything. And I wonder if they get a commission for selling their own high yield bonds, aka junk bonds, to the Federal Reserve. So I mean, they should be getting absolutely shellacked. We should be buying them at. I mean, first off, we shouldn't be buying them, but if we are going to be buying them, how about we buy them at, what, you want to sell it to us? How about we buy it for 5 cents on the dollar or 20 cents on the dollar, not 100 cents on the already overinflated value. It is just, it's basically, it's fascism, where you can go take digits on a keyboard, print up money out of thin air, and then use it to then buy up bonds, which the Japanese have been, maybe it's Racism Wednesday again, because I mentioned a country's name. The Japanese have been buying their stocks since, I believe, late 2014. And that was right when the Fed stopped printing money. So basically, it's been this one gigantic, hot potato where, okay, it was the Fed's turn to print money, late 2014. They stopped. The Bank of Japan started, then the ECB started, then they were all going to stop, and now it's the Fed's turn again, and now it's everybody's turn. And so this is something that was brewing. They have to know. Jerome Powell has to know. Janet Yellen had to know. Osama Ben Bernanke, he had to know. All these guys have to know. Even Donald Trump has to know. But he wanted to go in there and give people hope. Same thing, Obama was trying to do. But he was in between a rock and a hard place. He goes in there sounding like me or Dr. Ron Paul or you or 90% of the people probably watching us right now, and everything would tank and he get the blame. But if he starts doing all the things to game the stock market like he did, and then the stock market goes way up. I mean, and this was all basically, I literally predicted like basically all of this, with not only that he would win. The very first podcast episode I ever did was, listen, I don't care if there's 1,000 things that I want him to do and he does 999. And if he doesn't take care of the Federal Reserve by ending it, or at least using the bully pulpit to expose them, then I don't give a what about the other 999. And then what they're probably going to, and then if he embraces the stock market, they're probably going to pull it out from underneath him. And oh yeah, if he embraces the stock market, it's then going to cause interest rates to go up, because if we're in the greatest economy ever, then why can't we raise rates? And then that is then going to pop the stock market bubble. Literally have videos of this. Trump, it only has like 20 views on YouTube. It's like a crime. So if you guys wanted to go, if I could plug my channel, it's called The Trump Effect and Why Good News is Bad News. It probably has like 26 views. It was made when I was like the warm-up act for Adam Kokesh, like 4 years ago at Ernie's house. It was March 2017 is when I gave that presentation, made it in January 2017. Literally the roadmap for what happened. And so It's there, it's up there. It only has like 26 views. But what they should do is they should just fire every economic advisor and just go back and watch and at the time I didn't have very many videos. It's like I only had like 30 at the time, and they were all just on point. So it's not like I had 3,000 and you can just go and cherry pick a few of them. No, out of all the ones that I had over the first like 3 years of his presidency, or 2.5 years, completely on point. But I don't want to be right, because it pisses me off, because now you're going to get Joe Biden in there, and which maybe, who knows? I'm still thinking it could be Cuomo, or maybe even Michelle Obama. It's just.
Oh, maybe Justin Amash. Well, and hey, I want to mention a comment here. BC Matrix says all of them CEOs that bailed in 2019 knew. Oh, well, of course. Well, it certainly is looking more and more like that. And I think that's going to be the subject of a lot of inquiries once this is all finished, which is going to take a while to finish, by the way. Eccentric says Japan is a huge exporter. USA is not. Eric Wibshoff says, amen. We all just got robbed, but it's more like our parents and grandparents got robbed. They're about to get robbed again when states file bankruptcy and take pension
Well,
plans.
our parents and grandparents are also the ones who kept, voting in all this crap. And Josh and I were both young enough that we shouldn't be in this situation where, what do you mean we got robbed? You know what? It's because your parents or grandparents were stuck in government schools, getting indoctrinated, calling people like us crazy, that they allowed this whole Ponzi scheme to go on, which has been a Ponzi scheme since we've been born. And I don't feel bad that people and then how's their Ponzi scheme getting paid? By raising taxes on me. So I don't feel bad that people that wanted to enslave me might not get all their money back. And guess what? You're probably going to get your money. But what they should do is, if we're going to pay them back, we should just say, okay, well, you know what? You've got 20 years left to live. The net present value of your payments would be $950,000. Boom, Bob Smith, you get $950,000. Oh, Joe Roberts over there, you get $987,000. And so we just figure out what the present value is. Then it would cause massive inflation. And then the same people who basically voted in all these problems would be the same people who'd be getting screwed. And right. You know what? And those of us who had gold, silver, Bitcoin, or were sitting in cash doing put options, we'd make out. Our listeners would make out if they were listening to us. And you know what? There's no way to solve it. There's no way to solve this problem. So.
The best way, the only way that most people will continue to get robbed right now, unless you're paying for everything in certain cryptocurrencies or et cetera, would be the purchasing power. There's ways to get around the robbery, but I cannot mention it on a live stream for various legal reasons. Kathy Bobathy sent Canadian $10 in the super chat. Thank you so much, Kathy. It's always good to see you here. And awesome, I've seen some of your comments here. It says London, Rome, etc. Well, and we are witnessing, it's crazy how similar this is to the fall of the Roman Empire. And if you haven't already, I really hope that you guys type in on YouTube the fall of empires, world alternative media. You have to put world alternative media after it, all separate words, because even if you type in the name of my documentary as a full title, even if they have an insane amount of views, you will not find them. So anyway, I really appreciate everyone that's tuned in and hit that like button. Those super chats have gone a long way. Those are very, very, very useful to us being able to keep this media up and running. You guys are the heart of this independent media organization, and we're in the strangest times ever, guys. I mean, a lot of us are getting used to it, which is scaring me a little bit, is that how many people have just gotten used to this. But let's step back and think for a second. Wow, what the hell is going on? This is insane. And now we've had that moment. We've said, okay, this is really crazy. What the hell is going on? And now we have to go, okay, what the hell are we going to do about it? Well, there's many options for people to take action. And honestly, I mean, one of the things that worries me is how many people are just bowing down to the state in this whole issue, as if the state didn't create this problem in the first place, as if the state didn't, enact this slavery racket on us. But nonetheless, we need to break outside of that governance system. It's against new guidelines here on YouTube to say that you should disobey the government right now regarding this COVID thing. So, I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know. You should
totally trust everything they say. Do not for 1 second ever believe that the people in power don't have your best interest in heart. Definitely.
Yeah, I know. What you don't want to be weird. Change. The conspiracy realist sent $2 in the super chat. Says, "There, the banks get money yet?" I really appreciate the super chat, man. Yeah, it's the banks. I guarantee you don't keep my money. But yeah, it's one method where the money comes in and then you try to get it out, so you don't have to deal with the banks. And that's something that I've always believed in. Anyway,
I just posted my video too. It's only like the main meat and potatoes, only 20 minutes long, that I made in January 2017. It has 32 views on YouTube. Like it calls it out like through the progression of like, you know what, things are going to go good because everyone relative to Hillary, I think the stock market's going to go up, which that at the time was also a crazy view. Like people prior to Trump did not think the stock market was going to go up.
Right.
And then all that optimism would then leave Trump and the Fed having no excuse not to raise rates anymore, because if it's a great economy, why can't you not raise rates? And then, like literally boom, 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 boom. And I had the investment thesis throughout the whole thing, which is why I'm able to come here and talk to you today and not have to field a bunch of angry clients because no one's angry because they made a bunch of money last year and this year they barely lost nothing. So
yeah, and that's really that is what's the word for it, that is signifies the success right there. And as Zoe 13 sent a bunch of hearts in the chat, thank you to you, Zoe. Magnus 4G63 says Bitcoin is doing well and I am doing all I can to promote crypto, something we could all do to fight back. Well, right now, Bitcoin at one point, last time I checked, was at 8,800 and rose like
87.46 right now.
So it rose like 13 or 14% since yesterday. It's an interesting time to be alive.
I have the price of Bitcoin. I have the price of Bitcoin just like always on my desk right now because I just have like this like little key thing, so I just can look down anytime.
It's been so boring over the last couple of years. Well, but yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree, Magnus, and also discerning the difference between centralized and decentralized, which so many people seem to forget. Motorhead says when gold gets to 1900, the US dollar is done. I'm not sure it'll be done, but it'll definitely there will be a significant impact on gold, silver, and crypto when the US dollar is done, though. And obviously we'll see a lot of price.
People are coming about BitChute. I mean, one of the problems with BitChute, I mean, I still like pay BitChute probably like 10-15 bucks a month being like a silver subscriber or something. But the problem is they don't even give me like any special perks or like, okay, great, I got a mug, but it takes 6 days to go upload a video. And then I can literally try to search for my own video on there. And unless I'm in my account, I can't even find it, or unless you get a direct link. And so that's one of the problems is that, I mean, if we had, volunteers who wanted to go and help upload all the crap over there, maybe, but it's just, the time it takes to do it is just now I have every video backed up, and we actually, because of Ernest Hancock, you have all these videos are backed up through IPFS. So if they do take it down, there is a way to get these videos. I've got all of mine. Every single video we do is backed up multiple times. So yeah, I mean, that's we need other options. I'm looking into library. I think we just got a bunch of my stuff.
Well, BitChute literally sometimes takes 6 days to 2 weeks to upload a video and process it. There is an automated system that works, but it's really frustrating dealing with that when you have to get news up. So I've been talking with them for a long time about that. One guy actually unsubscribed from my Subscribestar pledging to my Subscribestar and wrote me a big all capitals angry message. He was paying $2 a month to my Subscribestar, and he said, "I'm not funding you anymore because you aren't on BitChute," and I am. But obviously, it's just like some people don't know that. But first of all, BitChute it isn't there yet. I do post videos. I've posted some independent videos that I haven't posted on YouTube on float.app, however, which does have a good video like pre-recorded video upload system. Which
actually, I might have a more popular video than you on BitChute. I've got one video that has over 1,000 views on BitChute, which is like a billion on
it's like
on YouTube.
It's like YouTube back in 2005, 1,000 views. Celebrity.
Oh no, there's literally, I mean, how many people have a video that has 1,000 views on BitChute? It's very, I mean, unless you're like a big star. I'm not a star. It was a video on Monero, so that's pretty timely video.
By the way, we do have a Monero address in the CoinTree account link below. Anyway, there's my voice is going here, and I got to do another video that's pre-recorded after this. So I really appreciate everyone joining us today. Hitting that like button helps a lot. Sharing on social media helps a lot. Everything is starting to come to fruition, and in many bad ways and many good ways, but it comes down to you, what happens next in your life. And you need to be a free, independent individual, not enslaved by some government system, not enslaved by some collectivist organized crime racket. You as individuals need to be free, and freedom is responsibility, and responsibility is humanity. And we need to get back to that and start recognizing the importance of independence and not depending on the state that creates the problems in the first place to come in and solve those problems, and the fraudulent monetary systems that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Don't deal with them. Do whatever you can to stop dealing with them, and just break free from this absolute slave racket, because the fence is open. It just depends on whether you're willing to go and walk through that opening. And most of this is based on fear, not enforcement. The government is mostly fear, not enforcement. So once we recognize that, we realize that we are free to leave, but everyone clutters together in a pack, scared of what could happen if they do leave. And trust me, you guys all deserve your freedom, and you all deserve to break free of this system. So do it.
Free money.
It's down to you. Oh my God, here we go. Well, anyway, I appreciate it, Tim. Any final words as we close this off?
No, libertyadvisor.com with a the in front of it for more information on wealth management. And you can check out my YouTube channel by clicking on one of my comments, and I'll say, hey, what's up? But no, thank you for having me, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hope you guys tune in tomorrow to see Jeffrey Tucker. We have an interview with Cynthia McKinney coming up shortly. We have an interview with Tim Moen, the leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada, who's an anarchist and tells you not to vote for him, or else you're obviously not listening to his message. Always a good guest, and we'll talk about the Canadian shutdown as well. And we got shows coming up with Ron Paul, with G. Edward Griffin. We got shows coming up with Sam Tripoli. We got shows coming up with many people. You do not want to miss the next couple of weeks. We got a massive block coming, and I'm really looking forward to bringing that all to you. So guys, tune in or stay tuned. Hit that notification bell because it just might notify you. DT says, World Alternative Media, what time is the show tomorrow? The show tomorrow with Jeffrey Tucker is at 11 a.m. PST. We might be about 5 minutes late from that, but 11 a.m. PST. Make sure to tune in at World Alternative Media for that. And of course,
you said he wrote a book on this stuff, right?
Well, he wrote, it looks like it. So we'll be talking with him all about this insanity. And he's obviously with the American Institute for Economic Research, a great organization that includes people like Edward Stringham, who we interviewed a couple of years ago, who wrote an absolutely brilliant book called Private Governance, which I also recommend. Anyway, we got lots more coming to you guys soon. I'm looking for that Cynthia McKinney interview as well. And I appreciate everyone tuning in. So make sure to hit that like button if you haven't already. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and Tim Picciott signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.